You have probably spent real money trying to get rid of them. Herbicide. Back-breaking hours on your knees with a trowel. You have pulled them, sprayed them, cursed them, and watched them come right back. And here is the part nobody tells you. The people who lived before modern medicine didn't eradicate these plants. They harvested them. They dried them. They pressed them into poultices and brewed them into teas and used them to fight infections that, without a hospital, would have killed you. Today, we are looking at 7 of the most overlooked plants growing in ordinary backyards right now, and the specific antibiotic-like properties that researchers are now confirming in controlled studies. Stay with us through the entire list, because plant number 4 is one that most people have actively removed from their lawns for decades, not knowing it was one of the most studied antimicrobial plants in all of traditional medicine. And plant number 7? You almost certainly stepped on it today. Plant number 1, dandelion. Look at your lawn. If there is any patch of grass that gets sun, there is almost certainly a dandelion growing somewhere in it. The bright yellow flower, the hollow stem, the white puffball seed head that your kids blow apart and scatter across the yard. You know this plant. You have always known it. The question is whether you have ever thought of it as medicine. Traditional healers across Europe, Asia, and the Americas used dandelion for centuries as an antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory tool. Every part of the plant was used, the root, the leaves, the flower. And modern researchers started paying attention. Laboratory studies have shown that dandelion extracts demonstrate inhibitory effects against a range of bacterial strains, including some that are increasingly resistant to conventional antibiotics. The compounds responsible include luteolin and other polyphenol that disrupt bacterial membrane function at the cellular level. Historically, the most common preparation was a root tea. The fresh root would be chopped and simmered in water, then consumed while warm to support the body during illness. Dandelion greens were also eaten raw in large quantities during spring months, when fresh food was scarce and the immune system needed support after winter. As always, do your own research before using any plant medicinally, particularly if you are taking prescription medications or managing a health condition. But dandelion is only where this gets interesting. Because the next plant on this list is one that dandelion was often combined with in traditional formulas, and the reason why says something remarkable about how our ancestors understood infection. Plant number 2, plantain, not the banana, not the tropical fruit. This is broadleaf plantain, Plantago major. It grows flat against the ground in driveways, sidewalk cracks, compacted soil, and the edges of garden beds where nothing else seems to want to grow. The leaves are oval, with prominent parallel veins running from stem to tip, and they are extraordinarily tough. You can press your thumbnail into them and they barely tear. That toughness is not accidental. Plantain contains compounds including aucubin and allantoin that researchers have confirmed carry real antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory activity. Laboratory studies have demonstrated that plantain extracts can slow the growth of certain pathogenic bacteria. But what made this plant indispensable in traditional wound care is something older than laboratories. Applied directly to a skin wound, the crushed or chewed leaf creates a natural poultice that historical medical traditions across multiple cultures independently developed. Native American medicine, European folk herbalism, and traditional Chinese medicine all arrived at the same conclusion about this plant, separately, across centuries. That kind of convergence is not coincidence. Traditional preparation was direct. A fresh leaf was cleaned, bruised to release its active compounds, and pressed over a wound, insect bite, or inflamed area. Some traditions made a simple tea from the dried leaves for internal use. Before trying any of this, consult current research and speak with a professional about what is appropriate for your situation. Now, if you are thinking that plantain sounds familiar, that is because it has been sitting in your yard this entire time. But the next plant actually looks like something you would throw away without a second thought, and it has a research profile that will make you reconsider that entirely. Plant number 3, chickweed. It grows in dense, mat-like clusters close to the ground, usually showing up in early spring and late fall when temperatures are cooler. The stems are thin and delicate, and the tiny white flowers have 5 petals, each so deeply notched they look like 10. Chickweed is one of those plants people barely notice, because it looks like nothing at all. Just ground cover. Just something soft underfoot. But chickweed has been used in traditional European and British herbalism for centuries as both an external antimicrobial agent and an internal cooling herb during feverish illness. Research has confirmed that chickweed contains saponins, flavonoids, and coumarins, compounds that collectively contribute to documented antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory activity in laboratory settings. Historically, chickweed poultices were applied to infected skin, rashes, and minor wounds where bacterial contamination was a concern. A simple chickweed tea was consumed to support the body during respiratory illness and inflammation. The plant was also eaten fresh in salads as a nutritive food, particularly during early spring when it is at its most potent. As with every plant in this list, research the plant independently and consult qualified guidance before any medicinal application, particularly for internal use. And if chickweed seems unremarkable from the outside, what comes next is a plant that most people consider a flat-out nuisance. A weed with thorns and a reputation for ruining garden beds. But healers across the ancient world considered it one of their most reliable defenses against bacterial infection. Plant number 4. Cleavers, the sticky weed. If you have ever walked through a garden bed and come out covered in tiny green stickers clinging to your clothes and skin, you have already had a very close encounter with Galium aparine. Cleavers, also called goosegrass. The entire plant is covered in microscopic hooked bristles, which is how it hitches rides on fabric, animal fur, and skin alike. Most people peel it off and throw it in the compost without another thought. Traditional herbalists thought very differently. Cleavers was a staple plant in European and North American botanical medicine for centuries. It was used specifically to support the lymphatic system during infection, as a cleansing herb during illness, and as a topical preparation for skin conditions associated with bacterial overgrowth. Modern analysis has identified the presence of tannins, flavonoids, and iridoid compounds in cleavers, and laboratory research has shown antimicrobial activity against several bacterial strains. The traditional preparation was almost always a cold infusion. The fresh plant was soaked in cold water overnight, strained, and the resulting liquid was consumed in small amounts throughout the day. This method was believed to preserve the plant's most delicate compounds in ways that boiling would destroy. Topically, the bruised plant was applied directly to affected skin. Always investigate thoroughly before using cleavers or any wild plant internally. What feels sticky and inconvenient in your garden may actually be something worth knowing more about. What comes next is one of the most misunderstood plants in natural medicine. It has been aggressively mowed down for a century, and its specific antimicrobial mechanism is something that research is only now beginning to fully explain. If this is new to you, and you want to keep building this knowledge, make sure you subscribe right now. We cover biblical plants, traditional medicines, and natural health research that most channels are not talking about. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss what is coming next. Plant number 5, red clover. Red clover grows in fields, roadsides, and unmowed lawn sections across most of North America and Europe. The round, pinkish-purple flower heads are distinctive once you know what you are looking for. Farmers have grown it for centuries as a soil nitrogen fixer. But what was happening in that field had more going on than most people realized. Red clover is one of the richest natural sources of isoflavones, a class of phytoestrogen compounds that have been studied extensively for a range of biological effects. Among those documented effects is antimicrobial activity. Research has shown that red clover extracts inhibit the growth of certain bacterial strains, including some gram-positive bacteria that are relevant to common skin and respiratory infections. The bioquinin A found in red clover has been specifically studied for its inhibitory effects against drug-resistant bacterial species in laboratory conditions. Traditionally, Red clover flowers were brewed into a tea and consumed during respiratory illness. The plant was used in North American native traditions and in European folk medicine both internally and as a topical wash for infected wounds and skin conditions. Dried flower tea remains the most widely documented historical preparation. Research it carefully. The isoflavone content means red clover interacts with hormonal pathways, which is medically relevant for specific populations. The plant that follows has something in common with red clover. It has been growing in agricultural land and backyards for millennia, and it holds a documented place in scripture alongside its antimicrobial reputation. Plant number 6, lamb's quarters. Lamb's quarters, or Chenopodium album, is one of the most widespread wild plants on Earth. It grows in disturbed soil, garden beds, compost piles, and at the edges of farmland. The leaves are grayish-green with a powdery coating, and the plant can grow to several feet tall in a single season if left undisturbed. Most gardeners pull it out and toss it without a second thought, because it looks weedy and unremarkable. In traditional and indigenous food systems across North America, Europe, and Asia, lamb's quarters was not a weed. It was a food crop. And it was more than food. The seeds and leaves contain a range of phenolic compounds and saponins that laboratory studies have confirmed carry antimicrobial activity against certain bacterial and fungal pathogens. Studies have shown inhibitory activity against Staphylococcus aureus and other commonly encountered pathogenic bacteria. The leaves were eaten fresh as a green similar to spinach, cooked into soups and stews, or dried and ground into flour. This was everyday nutrition in communities that had no pharmacies. The plant kept people fed and the body's defenses functional during seasons when illness was most likely to spread. Note that lamb's quarters contains oxalates, which in large amounts can be problematic for certain individuals, particularly those with kidney concerns. Research the plant thoroughly before any regular consumption. Now, save your attention for what is coming. Because plant number 7 is one of the smallest, most ignored plants on this entire list, and it has one of the most specific and well-documented antimicrobial mechanisms of all of them. Before we get to number 7, if you have been finding this valuable, leave a comment below and let us know which of these plants is already growing in your yard. Your answers help us know exactly what to cover next, and this community always brings something interesting to the conversation. Plant number 7, thyme, the weed most people don't recognize as medicine. Wild thyme, Thymus serpillum, spreads low across the ground in patches, releasing a sharp, clean herbal smell when stepped on. It shows up in lawns, rocky soil, and garden paths, often dismissed as a minor ground-covering nuisance. In cultivated form it sits in kitchen herb gardens. But wild thyme has been creeping across European fields and roadsides for thousands of years, and the people living alongside it knew exactly what it was good for. Thyme contains thymol and carvacrol, two of the most studied antimicrobial compounds found in any plant. The research here is not preliminary or speculative. Thymol has been shown in multiple laboratory studies to disrupt bacterial cell membranes, inhibiting growth of organisms including Staphylococcus aureus, Escherichia coli, and Salmonella species. It is active against both gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria. Carvacrol demonstrates similar mechanisms. These compounds are potent enough that they have been investigated as natural preservatives in the food industry for their ability to inhibit microbial growth. In traditional medicine, thyme tea was one of the most widely used remedies for respiratory infection across Europe. Thyme infused in raw honey was applied to wounds and throat infections alike. Ancient Greek physicians documented its use. Medieval European herbalists prescribed it specifically for chest infections and infected wounds. The plant appears in Benedictine monastery gardens as far back as the 9th century, planted deliberately for its medicinal properties. A simple preparation is thyme steeped in just boiled water for 10 minutes, strained and consumed as a tea. Thyme-infused honey is made by packing fresh sprigs into a jar of raw honey and allowing the compounds to transfer over several days. As always, Do your own independent research before using this or any plant therapeutically, and be aware of any medications or health conditions that may be relevant. You stepped on thyme today and didn't think twice about it. That changes now. If you have been watching this far and you are starting to see your yard differently, that is exactly the point. Hit like on this video. It tells us this is the kind of content worth making more of, and it helps more people find what you just watched. The problem nobody warns you about. Here is where most people make a critical error. They go outside, they identify these plants, they harvest them with real enthusiasm, and then the medicinal value disappears within days. Because harvesting is only half of it. If you dry these plants at the wrong temperature, store them in the wrong container, or harvest them at the wrong point in their growing cycle, the active compounds degrade. The thymol evaporates. The polyphenol oxidize. What looked like medicine becomes nothing more than dried plant matter. Traditional herbalists spent years learning the difference between a medicinally potent harvest and a useless one. The timing, the method, the drying process, and the storage conditions all determine whether what you collect actually retains its power. To learn exactly how to harvest, dry, and store these plants the right way so they hold their medicinal properties for months, watch this next video right here. It walks you through the complete process step by step, from when to cut each plant to how to store it properly so nothing goes to waste. Click it now and we will pick right up from here.